European Union, but she says negotiations will go to the wire. This is NPR. Hundreds of people are lining up in Paris to pay tribute to former French President Jacques Chirac, who died Thursday. NPR's Eleanor Beardsley reports Monday will be a national day of mourning across France.
Les Invalides, where Chirac's body is lying in state, will stay open all night to accommodate the crowds coming to sign the condolence book and see his flag-draped casket. On Monday, there will be a ceremony attended by President Emmanuel Macron and around 30 former and current heads of state, including Russian President Vladimir Putin. Chirac, who served as president from 1995 to 2007, is especially being remembered for his sense of humor and love of regular people. In 2003, France vigorously opposed America's invasion of Iraq. Chirac said a friend should be able to tell another friend when he's making a mistake. French Jews are also remembering Chirac for being the first leader to recognize the country's responsibility in deporting Jews to Nazi death camps during World War II. Eleanor Beardsley, NPR News, Paris.
Pope Francis celebrated a special mass today in St. Peter's Square to mark World Day for Migrants and Refugees. The Pope called for compassion toward the world's poor and outsiders. He also criticized what he says is the indifference to the global migration and refugee crisis. During the Mass, Francis unveiled a bronze statue depicting migrants crammed into a small boat. In baseball, the St. Louis Cardinals have clinched the National League Central Division. The second-place Milwaukee Brewers will play the Washington Nationals Tuesday night in the National League Wild Card game headed into the World Series. I'm Jim Howard, NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Union of Concerned Scientists, putting rigorous, independent science to work for a healthy planet and a safer world. More at ucsusa.org. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Supported by Goose Island, pairing beer and music since 1988. Goose Island Beer Company, Chicago, Illinois. Listen critically, enjoy responsibly.
You're listening to Sound Opinions, and later in the show, we will review the fourth album from Sturgill Simpson, Sound and Fury. It's an album that he collaborated with a Japanese anime director to put out a movie at the same time as his record. But first, a classic album dissection of Fugazi's 1990 album, Repeater. Now, some people may be saying, classic album, Fugazi, who? Before a generation or more of punk and post-punk and young independent musicians, this album is a holy grail. It takes Guy Picciotto and Brendan Canty, guitarist and drummer of the proto-emo band Rites of Spring, a Motown superfan and bassist Joe Lally, and Discord Records founder and minor threat leader together as a band and yet to die. It's a powerful combination that became a creative powerhouse for more than a decade and went on to sell millions of records. From an American point of view, I think no single artist did more to advance the cause, shape the ethics, or define the aesthetics of punk rock than Ian MacKaye. Yeah, I would find that hard to argue with. I mean, Hurst was minor threat. When the initial punk moment in New York petered out, the Ramones were talking about, where does this thing go next? Right, along comes Minor Threat, and that scene in Washington, D.C., it's for records, it's an independent label, it's a lifestyle, it's an ethos, it's a sound, Minor Threat's at the heart of it. He's a superstar, and he's barely in his 20s, right? And then it's over.
Sometimes, when you want a nice picture, you got to pull the shutter, and that's it, right? And Minor Threat can always be just that. We represent a really specific time, and those are the songs. That's it. There's nothing else. So it's all there.
That's Ian MacKaye in a recent conversation we had with him about Repeater and about Fugazi's legacy. And we're going to hear parts of that conversation throughout the show. But when it came to Minor Threat calling it quits, he wasn't nostalgic at all.
It seemed wise, and I think it's been proven by time that just to knock it on his head and let people go do what they wanted to do. Like, we just didn't agree on which direction to go. And it wasn't that anybody was going in the wrong direction necessarily.
You know, it was an incredible moment. Washington, D.C. punk, like other regional scenes around the country, there was no built-in infrastructure to release these records. So you had to create your own. So Discord Records comes along because Ian MacKaye and his friend at the time, Jeff Nelson, with whom he formed a little punk band in the late 70s named the Teen Idols, that's I-D-L-E-S. Said, okay, how do we get this record out? Well, we'll have to create our own label, I guess. And they literally put this record out on their own. I mean, the band members themselves cut, folded, and glued the record packaging on that 7-inch that they put out there called Minor Disturbance in 1980. The band only released a few recordings, then broke up, and as I said, the band that everybody talks about, Minor Threat, creating something called hardcore. Jim, we should give our listeners a thumbnail. This was back to basics. Take out all melody, take out everything extraneous, and play as fast and loud and hard as possible. It is the height of the Reagan era. We are angry about that, and there's this new culture out there who has not been there for the second until 76, 77. You know, we want a sound, and the sound is super aggressive, and the dancing matches, slam dancing, the mosh pit. I'm going to hardcore matinees at CDG on Saturday, which was all ages, right? And it was $5, and it was 20 bands, and it lasted an hour and a half. Yeah, all these little cities outside of the major areas. I mean, New York and LA had their own scenes, but you go to Washington D.C., you go to Hoboken, you go to Chicago, you've got hardcore scenes in those cities. In Washington D.C., you had Minor Threat, but you also had Bad Brains, who were a huge influence on the young Ian MacKaye, and Youth Brigade and Government Issue and Scream. They had a scene. By 83, MacKaye had felt that the scene had sort of played itself out, at least in his mind. You know, how do we go forward from this?
In 1984, people didn't know what to do, because in Washington at that point, yes, there were some issues in terms of like what was going on with the shows. There was some really moronic behavior. A lot of people we knew were saying, I just want to be a part of this. There's so many like killers who want to beat people up, or people were just sort of starting to flee the ship. And I think some of us thought, well, we need to just respond by making something, just do something.
And then he happened to produce a band by the name of Bright Spring that was coming out, with Deep Shoto and Brendan Canty, future members of what would be Fugazi. He produces that record, that debut record by Bright Spring, and there's something different happening in that record that sort of separates it a little bit from that hardcore path. It could be parts of it. It could be racist. Obviously, the bad brains are people of color. It could be bullying and thuggish.